we cannot answer this intellectually. That's why we cannot use our mind to understand the truth. I'm an
Thank you.
ex-Muslim. I converted.
What's your name?
My name is Abdul Qadir.
Nice to meet you. Abdul Qadir, nice to meet you. Thank you for waiting so patiently.
No problem. It was very enjoyable, actually.
Thank you.
May I record this for my personal?
If you want to, yeah.
We're recording this as well?
Yeah, we can do, yeah. I'll just clip this hair.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Oh, thank you. Okay. So, my objections or criticisms against Islam.
What's your name?
Abdul Qadir.
Abdul Qadir. My name is Zishan.
Hisham.
Zishan.
Zishan.
Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you too.
Nice to meet you. So Abdul Qadir, just out of interest,
Yes.
you used to be Sunni Muslim, Shia Muslim?
Sunni, yes.
Sunni. What was the reason you left?
So the reason is not about Sharia and these things. The reason is philosophical. I have always been interested to understand the nature of religion, what religion means. Okay. So and my basic question was. So I converted to Hinduism, and in Hinduism,
Are you Hindu now as well?
Yes. So in Hinduism, the basic question is, okay, you all religions talk about God, and God created us, created this. What is this that He created? Before you talk about God, what is it that He created? What is existence? Okay. Before we talk that there is a God, we should first know what existence is, right? And after it, we can decide and conclude whether there is a creator of it or not.
So you believe you got the answer for that, yeah? From Hinduism.
I have asked many Muslims, many Christians, and Abrahamic religious people,
Yeah.
and they all say that we don't know what existence is, or it's self-evident,
Yeah.
okay, or something like this. They don't have a clear vision about existence, this word, this concept, this thing, existence. What is it? We say God exists. Okay, exists, but you don't know what existence is. So how do you say God exists while you don't know what existence is? This exists because I touch it, because I see it, I smell it, I hear it. But God exists in a totally different sense, right? So you must have a general definition or a general understanding of what existence is before you say God exists and God created existence. So what?
So in Hinduism they answer that?
So in Hinduism, they agree with other religions that we cannot answer this intellectually. That's why we cannot use our mind to understand the truth of existence, and therefore we cannot use our minds to understand the truth of religion. So first, the truth.
Do they believe there's no God, or they believe in a God?
They don't believe, they see. They encourage or they teach that you should see what existence is, because mind doesn't help us.
What about
to
God?
understand.
Do they believe God?
Not believe. They don't like the word believe. They like the word see God.
Okay, do they see God?
They see God, but if I tell it to you, that's nothing. That's meaningless. You should see it for yourself.
And when they say see God, is God Brahma or?
Yes, they have many names and many details.
Do you believe in Brahma?
Yes, Brahman is existence.
You've seen Brahma, yeah?
I haven't.
You don't believe in Brahma then?
I don't believe. I'm on a spiritual way. Like
Okay.
Once you start understanding intellectually, you start an intellectual, a spiritual way, sadhana. They call it sadhana, spiritual way.
What do they call it?
Sadhana. Sadhana
sadhana.
means spiritual way.
Sadhana or Sanatana?
Not Sanatana. No, Sanatana is the name of Hindu religion. It's different, but Sadhana means the way you start moving spiritually in your life to go beyond this mind that is blocking us from understanding what existence is.
Okay.
Okay, so we say that going beyond mind involves rituals, worship. It can involve 1,001 things.
You do rituals as well?
I haven't started yet, but I'm still learning. Okay.
You do Murti Puja?
Huh?
Murti Puja?
No. I'm following Advaita Vedanta doctrine, which focuses on philosophy.
Okay.
Focuses on philosophy. So there are many pathways. There are many ways in Hinduism, including Islam. Even Islam is considered as a way to God, a legitimate way to God.
Idol worship.
Huh?
Idol worship.
Islam.
No, I'm talking about Murti Puja, isn't it? And I assumed you said that Murti Puja is something that takes you to God in Islam as well.
Oh no.
Okay.
I mean, even Islam, even Christianity are considered in Hinduism, within Hinduism, as one of the paths to God.
Right.
So, but they are paths beyond mind. They are not intellectual. They are not concluded by logic.
So if it's not by logic, you're saying, am I correct to assume that you mean by experience? It is through your experience that you see God?
Yes, by experience and something deeper than experience, which is the annihilation of the ego. Actually, the sadhana, the spiritual way, is a process, a lifelong process of annihilating the ego. The ego involves the mind, the character, the identity that is given to us by society. All of this is blocking us from knowing what existence is. So my question is, in Islam, isn't it a legitimate question to ask what existence is before we decide whether there is a God or not?
You can ask any question you want. In Islam, you can ask any question you want, but then the answering of the question or the absence of the question from the argument that I'm going to posit to you doesn't necessarily conclude the absence of a God or a deity.
Of course. No.
That's what I would say.
Exactly.
Like the absence of evidence, it's not the evidence of absence.
Exactly.
So just because a person can't necessarily explain existence, that doesn't necessitate that there is no end to the contingent chain. And I'll tell you what I mean by that. Like if I'm kind of speaking to you as a skeptic, if you are a skeptic, would you accept that you exist?
Of course.
Would you accept that there is existence?
Of course.
So in philosophically, there's three types of existences. There is an impossible existence, there's a contingent existence, and there is a necessary existence.
Exactly.
We are contingent existences. So we rely on something else.
Yes.
That relies on something else, that relies on something else, and it goes on. Now here's the question that I posit. Can you have an infinite regress of dependent things?
Both are impossible. Infinite and finite regress. Both have contain logical fallacy. If you say infinite regress, that's impossible.
Yeah.
There must be a finite final cause, right?
Yeah.
But if you accept the final cause, you are breaking the other law of cause, the law of cause and effect, right?
But this isn't the argument of causation. This is the argument of contingency, where we're just talking about existences. This transcends cause and effect, because cause and effect is something that's questioned even in science as well. That it's again taken on face value. It's kind of seen to be an axiom of things. However, contingency, when we rely on something that relies on something that relies on something, like you said, it would be an absurdity to assume that it goes on. The only, if it's not existent, if it's not contingent, if it's not impossible, the only other thing at the end of the chain has to be a necessary existence.
Yes.
Logically, rationally, the inference to the best explanation tells us there has to be a necessary existence.
But the necessary existence contradicts with the logical law of cause and effect, right?
But that's why I'm saying, even of dependencies doesn't come under as much question and critique as a cause and effect does.
That's why I told you that both options, both ways are involve or contain a fallacy. If you accept infinite regress, that's a fallacy. It's impossible. Infinite regress is impossible.
What's the fallacy that you said in the other one?
And the other
that there's a necessary existence.
It will demolish, or it will contradict with cause and effect, because this necessary existence will not have a cause.
When you say it's fallacious, are you referring to modal logic?
Mm-hmm.
Because in modal logic, it's not fallacious.
Why?
Because in modal logic, you've got contingent, you've got necessary, and you've got impossible existence. In modal logic, it'll be if P, then Q, P, therefore Q. It falls well within that pattern, and you've got the three types of existences, which again are in modal logic. Then when you look, of course, in philosophy as well, you've got the likes of Aristotle, Leibniz, and Avicenna and the likes. So this hasn't come into, there's never been an issue when it comes to the logical and the reasonable nature that there is a necessary being. It's the first time I'm actually coming across it. The issue has only been that, you can have an infinite regress.
Mm-hmm.
That's the only kind of alternative to that. To say that that's fallacious, I'd want to know how that's fallacious.
Just because at the beginning you say, like we say, there must be a cause for every effect, right?
No, that's not right. Cause and effect is a different argument. That's the argument from causation. I'm talking about the argument of contingency. That's something different. That's to do with modal logic.
Okay, but the necessary existence.
Yeah. You're talking about the prime mover. That's the Aristotelian argument. That's to do with the prime mover.
Exactly.
I'm not talking about that. This is different.
Mm-hmm.
This is to do with dependencies and modal logic. Because I already knew that certain people can have issues with that. Some people don't even believe in the Big Bang Theory. They wouldn't even believe that the universe came into being. So I undercut all of that. Because we're not physicists. We should. I mean, what's the point of us going into that?
But,
so yeah, go ahead.
Let's come back to my basic question.
I'll give you an example. Yeah, because we sometimes understand things through examples. If I was to throw something over there, and I had to ask permission from him, he had to ask permission from him, he had to ask permission from him, and it went on for infinity.
Mm-hmm.
The permission, I wouldn't ever get to throw the ball.
Mm-hmm.
There has to be an end. Somebody to say yes. Then it comes back, yes. Then I throw it.
Okay.
So the mere fact that we exist means that there is an end to that chain. Otherwise, being contingent beings, we wouldn't exist. So our very nature relies on this predication that there is a necessary being. Go ahead.
But you are talking to someone who is a theist. I'm a Hindu. I am not an atheist. So I believe in God anyway. But we have a different, totally different approach. What the approach is, we don't know what existence is. And I'm asking you, according to Islam, according to Prophet Muhammad, did Prophet Muhammad say what existence is before he tells you that God exists, that there is a creator who gave existence? What is existence?
So when you talk about existence, what do you mean? Like, what is existence? Because I can tell you existence is being conscious and living. Existence could be, like Descartes said, I think, thinking. I think, therefore I am.
Mm-hmm.
Then Wittgenstein will say language. So there's different kind of, let me just plug that on here. So that's why I'm saying that, look, when it comes to existence, that there's various answers of existence, and
Very nice,
and there's different kind of ways people will kind of unpack that and approach that. However, the point still stands. There's something even basic to existence, which is the necessary being or the necessary existence. That's something that all existence that we see and understand around us relies upon. This oneness, this necessary being who's independent, who's eternal, who has will, who has power, immeasurable power, who's intelligent. So that's what we're saying, that look, these questions are fantastic. And there's some questions that if a tree falls over and there's no one here to hear it, does it make a sound? Now that's fantastic. That can be debated and that can be discussed. However, coming to God is more fundamental to everything. These sorts of questions don't interfere when it comes to the existence of God. And now when we're dealing with the existence of God, you said your name is Abdul?
Abdul Qadir.
Abdul Qadir. So when it comes to the existence of God, now we need to determine that if God is bridging that gap from his immeasurable knowledge to our limited knowledge, now we're dealing with scripture. How do we determine which scripture came from this necessary being? Number one. Number two, the rishis or the prophets. How do we look at the criteria about which of them came from God and which teachings we can kind of go to that will be incorruptible? That's why something that's fundamental to everything. Like, I agree with what you said, because when you were talking about the ego presupposes a being presupposes existence, and again we're in a loop again. When you said, look, that the ego is something that's the most fundamental, I'm saying the most fundamental of the fundamental is a necessary being upon which any idea or any conception relies upon. That is the necessary being which logic has no issue with, the philosophers have no issues with, all the dharms, the Sanatan dharm, Christianity, Judaism, Sikhism, Islam, they have no issue with. The issue then comes with scripture. Which scripture is it? What's the criteria of that scripture? And then now you'll have certain people that might be atheists, or certain people that will believe and will want empirical evidence. Some people will want experiential evidence. Now we need to determine, okay, evidence. What sort of evidence do we look at? Scripture. You're telling me scripture. Do you have evidence of that scripture? Is it present? Do you see where I'm going?
Yeah.
Okay.
But please, you said that there are many visions or opinions about what existence is.
Yeah, depending on the questioner, depending on the answerer,
Yes.
depending on the context.
So
etc.
basically, this means that we don't know what existence is. We don't know for sure, we human beings, we rational beings, we don't know what existence means. And yet, many of us, like Abrahamic religions...
Let me just correct that.
Yes.
Because like I said, as believers, we believe that the primary existence is the necessary being upon everything depends. That is the existence. Like, existence comes from God. Now, our existence now is in relation to that. It's contingent. Like, we are dependent beings, and our existence, the purpose of the existence, about who are we? Like, you'll speak to somebody, they'll say, okay, existence. But that's a very generic term. Existence to somebody will be the mere fact that I think, cogito ergo sum. I think, therefore I am. Now for you to say, look, as human beings we don't know, but a lot of people subscribe to the fact that we think. The mere fact that you are thinking is existence. Some people will say consciousness is existence. Some people will say experience is existence. All of them are correct. All of that is...
How can this be that all of them are correct?
Because it's such a generic term, and it depends in which facet you're asking that. If for example I say from numbers between 1 and 10, add that to numbers between 90 and 100. Mm-hmm. Now because I'm leaving a big barrier to entry from 1 to 10, and then from 90 to 100, I'm going to get various answers. Exactly. However, if I say 1 plus 1, so if you say, what is existence to you? What is existence to Islam? What is existence to so-and-so? Okay. What is existence to this? So what you're doing is narrowing it down. What is existence in terms of the metaphysical? What is existence in terms of a banker, at work, doing taxes for somebody? Do you see?
Yeah. You're saying that there are multiplicities of experiencing existence for everyone, right?
I'm saying it's context based. Like in philosophy, I gave you the example that there are 3 types of existences.
Yes, I see.
That's what existence is.
But these are types, but not what existence is. These are classifications, descriptions, right?
Yeah.
But it's not the definition of what it is. First we define it, then we classify it, we give it some descriptions. Description is not defining, right?
So I'll tell you. Philosophically,
I exist, you exist, and God exists.
Yeah.
God exists. In what sense?
Okay.
Do we have the same type or kind of existence?
What do you want defined? Necessary existence or contingent existence?
Existence as such first.
Necessary, yeah?
Existence as such must be defined first. Then we talk about types of existence. We can define types of existence. Necessary is a type of existence. contingent existence is a type of existence. But what in the first place is existence, that is the main question.
I don't think that's the main question.
Because if you say God exists and we don't know what existence is, so
Is there?
is there?
Yeah.
Is there? It means exists, right? God.
No,
exists.
is there. Not exist. God is there.
Okay, so you're replacing the word exists by the word is, and this
No, with
doesn't
there,
change.
there.
Is there, but there must be interpreted metaphorically, right? It's not in a place. There is not a place, right? It's not a place, not a time, right?
God, yeah.
So God is. At
God-
least we say
yeah,
God exists.
God exists.
It means God is,
Yeah.
right? This is the so we are replacing.
So
exists
what's the
with
opposite?
is.
So either something doesn't exist, i.e. it's not there.
Yes, something is not.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
There cannot even be types of
So
existence
if
actually.
they actually can.
They cannot, because if you say contingent existence.
Okay, let me give you an example. So when I asked you initially, do you believe you exist? You gave a very quick answer. You said yes.
Yes, of course.
But what is existence?
I don't know.
Then
This
how
is
can
the
you?
miracle.
But how can you say you exist then?
This is the miracle.
No, but how can you say you exist if you don't know what it is? Why did you say yes?
Because I am in it. I don't know it by intellectual thinking.
No,
I know it.
No,
I
but
know
you,
that I
according to your
exist.
standard, if you can't define it, then
This is
we
the
need to
mistake
go.
of Descartes. Descartes didn't realize that we know that we exist not by thinking. How can you say that I conclude that I exist?
Descartes had many other fundamental problems.
Existence.
That wasn't the only
precedes,
problem.
As the existentialists say, existence precedes.
No,
thinking.
but coming back to this point, Abdul Qadir, when I said, do you exist? You
I
said,
know it not by thinking. I
but-
know it
okay, then
by,
why is it then?
by being it.
But what is it?
It's self-evidenced.
Okay, there you go then, isn't it?
Existence is self-evident, but we don't know it by
But you
our
can't
minds.
define it though.
No.
So you can't define
So
it.
by not being able to define it, it means that we cannot know it by intellectual, right? By reason.
Does that mean it's not important? Does that
Of
mean it's
course,
not?
no, it means the opposite actually. On the contrary, it means it's the most fundamental thing we must know before we start using our reasons to know anything else.
But like you said, if you don't know it, does that mean you can't question and you can't progress without knowing that? That would make it an axiom.
You cannot conclude intellectual certainty from, for example, God exists and things like that. These are intellectual analysis.
So you're coming to the inference to the best explanation, yeah?
Not the best explanation.
The inference, you're inferring, yeah?
Yes, but
You're inferring that you exist.
No, I'm not inferring. I'm saying that I didn't know it by reason, by inferring.
How do you know that?
I know it by being it now.
What is that?
By isness.
What is it? How do you know? How do you know you're not plugged
If I
into?
say it to
How do you
you-
know you're not plugged into like you're not a brain in a vat, or you're not plugged into a computer system?
This is something I cannot say that I know for sure.
So you could be in a machine.
Yes.
This could all be like a simulation.
Yes, of course.
Then why did you say you exist then?
I exist. Not
you know.
wait. No, wait. I exist, but not as I don't know existence by touching it, by senses. I don't know existence
How do
by
you know
touching
it? Then again, it comes
by
back-
senses.
By
What you're
sense
saying,
again, which sense? Which sense?
by existing, I know existence by existing, not by senses.
Yeah, but
you saying
what you're-
you
but the ex-
know.
Pardon?
No, knowing.
Yes.
Do you know what knowing is?
Knowing
Yes.
is knowing
is
existence
experience.
is
One moment.
self-evident.
Okay.
It's not knowing
Feeling,
by
yeah,
something.
feeling.
So-
Feeling.
I know it by it.
so you're saying you
You
can't.
understand? I know
No.
it by it. Knowing existence is by existence.
So you
itself.
accept self-evident things, and you can still progress.
And you know it by it. Self-evident things
What is
are
it?
known
Which
by
feeling,
them,
sir? Which
by
feeling?
it.
But what's it though?
That's why they are self-evident.
Yeah.
Because
Well, I would
you
argue.
know them by them.
But I would argue existence
Which sense?
would be self-evident. But you had an issue with that at the beginning, and when I asked you that same question, do you exist? You immediately said yes, you exist, and then you said, well, I know it from my experience. But for the
My experience.
yeah,
I
you
didn't
say-
it from my experience.
Okay.
I said by existing. I said by existing.
Well, is that
I
not experience?
I know that I exist by existing,
But you
not
ju-
by thinking.
No, but that's you can't define
by
something by
touching.
using the same word.
It's not
You say, I say what's existence?
Of course.
I said what's existence? You said I know existence by existing. So if I was
that's the only possible
so
way,
if I asked you what's flocking cellular amplification, you say, oh, it's when I do flocking cellular amplification. That's not you defining it. You shouldn't be using the word in the definition of that word.
I said in the beginning we cannot define existence.
But then why were you so quick to say?
How do you then define existence?
No definition.
Well, what we're saying is it's an axiom, isn't it? But he's saying without like you shouldn't necessarily progress the conversation. If it's an axiom, we have to first get rid of this notion about what actually existence
Are you a
is.
scientist?
Sorry?
Are you a scientist?
No.
Have you studied science?
Yes. And philosophy as well.
Do you study science, you study philosophy?
Yes.
Tell
And
me-
religion.
And religion?
Yes.
So you're well versed in everything.
Well, not everything. But
So
I had a conversation with you last time. You were very well versed, and we had a nice conversation.
Well, I have to tell you, I left school at 13 years of age.
Oh yeah, you told me.
And I
Yeah.
spent 61 years in gambling clubs, so I don't have an education.
61 years.
Yes, I don't have an education.
Did you at least win something in those 61 years?
Pardon?
Did you at least win?
No, but I'm just saying.
Okay.
The way, having a discussion like this, we are conditioned to be logical. There is nothing about us or creation that is logical. Absolutely nothing. Doesn't matter what the physics says, and it doesn't matter what science says. Because science, if they go on for another billion years, they will never be able to explain consciousness. And that's a fact.
How do you know though?
Because I know. Because
That's,
I know.
that's not
Well,
sufficient.
let people, science
Yeah.
has been around for about 300 years now.
No, but consciousness is something
And right now-
it's a new thing that they're venturing into.
How can you say it's a new thing? How can you
Because
say that it's a
consciousness
new-
studies have just started somewhat recently, like in the last 15 odd years.
Oh, don't say that.
Like I don't want to
Oh.
fall in the God of the gaps
No.
fallacy and
Oh,
say just
please, don't
because
say-
science can't
don't-
answer this,
don't say
therefore it's
consciousness
That's,
is mentioned in the Upanishads. In the
I'm sure.
Upanishads of
an interpretation of consciousness, as we mentioned.
It's consciousness mentioned in the Upanishads 500 or 300 years.
What does it
before-
mention?
Before AD.
What does it say?
It says in some of the Upanishads, it says consciousness is Brahman. Brahman is consciousness. Existence is consciousness.
So who's Brahman?
And this is miraculous, actually.
So if consciousness is Brahman and you're saying Brahman is, well, what is Brahman?
Brahman is existence. And existence is consciousness. But this is, yes. This is what...
There's something else I would like to ask.
So he's saying existence is his God, in other words. So that was what we were saying, but we were talking in terms of philosophy. We were saying that because there are certain people that had issues with God, they said, look, but we have no issues with contingency and necessity. So we have no issue with having a necessary existence, but to define that as God, that's the issue. But you've come along saying, look, we can't necessarily go into this sort of stuff. We have to analyze what existence is.
Yes.
But you've come along and said existence is Brahma. But can you prove Brahma? No, Brahma is
No,
existence.
that's why in the beginning
Yeah.
I tried to ask you what is
Yeah.
existence before you tell me the types of existence.
Yeah.
What types of existence there are, you should first define existence in itself. For example, tell me what juice is before you tell me the types of juice you have.
Not necessarily, because if somebody's asking what liquid is, part of the definition of a liquid can be densities of that liquid as well.
For example, okay.
You know what I mean? For example, you got orange juice, you got oil, you got water. So this is why I told you, you're asking an umbrella term. This is something
you can
general.
Talk about the intensity but you have
Yeah.
to define what a fluid is before you talk about
Yeah, in
the
terms of its
qualities.
molecular. Yeah.
Yes.
So the thing is that if someone's saying, oh, but that's the orange juice liquid, but that's a type of liquid.
Exactly.
So when I'm talking about a fundamental type of existence, philosophically is a necessary existence.
Okay.
And from that comes a contingent existence. I said this to you, but then you were like, no, but that's a type of existence, this and that. So do you see, like, to us, I already defined it. Even if you want to look into philosophers, there's certain philosophers that were saying, cogito etos ergo sum, which I think, therefore I am. Thinking, that's a type of, like, that is his form of existence and
For example,
the like. Yeah.
let me tell you.
Sorry.
A form of into the abyss, the way they interpret it.
Yeah, exactly.